Which direction is north? Does anybody, are there any of those geographical? Okay, so Mathias Lesniak is in Oslo because of the wildcat strikes at the airports, and he sends his open source love and apologies. I will introduce him in a minute, and I'm going to try and channel some of him, and I took over his slides. And so this is a fresh version of this presentation, and it's building on some presentations and some collaboration that he and I have been doing for a few years. I'm going to touch on that as well. This is... I've been in open source in 2005, and and I've been marketing open source since 2011, 12, I guess is when I really started, and we are always faced with the same questions, and we always have to say, yes, it's secure, yes, we give our competition our best ideas, yeah, right? And, bizarrely, I'm having people pitching me now, like young tech folk pitching me now on, well, instead of deploying microsites from a code container, you can have a content management system, and then build all these things into one. And so I'm kind of happy because I just get to do my marketing career again, which went through Drupal and open source CMSs, right? But it's a very strange time. So, because we always have to talk about this thing, and because as we've been learning today in the keynote, the world is in a it's a very even more difficult time than we've already been in. We need to be able to explain what it is that we do, maybe why it is that we do, but also what the world gets from that. I think there's way more than I've touched on in this presentation, and this presentation, obviously we made it before I saw Jutte's presentation and thought about that some more, but imagine your folks are older and they're like, oh my God, he gives away stuff for free. You're just going to have to it's going to move back in the house, and how is that possible? We want to get from this sort of situation, realistically, actually, we want to be able to talk with decision makers, buyers, investors, governments, I don't know, about the real reasons why open source is better. And so I'm going to just run through a whole bunch of that. Very happy to take questions, also talk about it afterwards. I'm planning on being here all of today and probably most of tomorrow. So we want to go from this terrible thing to, most awesome thing ever. Because of Mathias' sense of humor, I have two sets of opening and thank you slides. But as I said, we're talking about the impact of our open source work. I've been in open source for 20 years, through many different paths, went from technical through community to marketing and communications. I now run a really, really fun company called Open Strategy Partners, where we focus on storytelling in human context to connect technology with real-world impact. Boom. So I co-founded the German Drupal Association. I live in Cologne. We just had Carnival. A laugh, everyone. So that's Open Strategy Partners. Not why I'm here today. This is Mathias. He is the ambassador, the official ambassador of the Typo 3 project. You can see that the orange corporate branded slides are Mathias's in origin. Mathias lives in Oslo. Really, really tremendous spokesperson and thinker in and around open source. And he has been driving a lot of inter-project communication and interaction. For example, he was part of setting up the Open Website Alliance that has been active kind of at the top end of the web and starting to get some activism and getting the top-end projects and the CMS projects into things like talking with the governance instances, talking with the European Union. For a long time, it's only been the infrastructure level that's been talking with policymakers, and from the top down, we'd like to have some more impact there. So, open source is radical, and it's kind of unknown despite how long we've been around. It rests on practice, not just theory and hope, and it is good, and it does good in the world. We do good in the world. You do good in the world. you work with it every day. If I asked 4 or 5 of you in the room, I'm sure we'd come to some sort of consensus opinion quickly. But if I asked any individual, in the coffee breaks today, what is open source? I bet I could get from 5 people, I could get about 7 definitions, right? And what if you stop someone on the street, right? How are you going to describe it to someone who doesn't share any of your positive experiences about it? And can you explain it to others so that they really get it? Super positive that I can pay my rent thanks to open source. Super positive that I can help my clients thanks to open source. But, there's so many interesting counterintuitive things that happen when you put yourself in an economy of plenty instead of an economy of scarcity mindset, right? And the sorts of authoritarian movements and governments who are in control in a lot of places right now, part of the way that they generate fear to exercise control over people is by saying, well, if we spend money on this, there is no money for you. If they get this, you get none. Not true in general, especially not true in open source, right? Yes. So this is a mindset of plenty, and, the more we use our software, the more valuable it gets. You can invest once and turn it into lots and lots of things. So, Juliette, someone who I met in person really reasonably, pointed out that a lot of us are having difficulty selling the idea of sustainability and supporting open source maintainers into corporate environments right now. I feel this is one of my missions for the next couple of years to try and deal with this. But it doesn't exactly fit with the Western corporate capitalist mindset of do a thing, get a thing. It's hard. How many of you have experienced how hard it is? Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. Me too. But it's weird, right? Open source is weird. Free and open source software is a radical shift away from market economics and capitalism. The idea of copyright is to I'm not going to do air quotes. The idea of copyright is to protect creators, so that if I make something, I can get paid for it. And copyright is also now deeply, deeply entrenched in the world of corporate, exploitation, and the authoritarians that we're talking about. It's a mechanism of control. It is right up to a point. I believe with all the extensions and all the variations around the world, it's very, very hard to say that it's the best way to do it. But the idea is there are legal limitations on what you can do with someone else's intellectual property. Good if you're an author, you're a painter, you're a creator in general. Implementation, we could talk about that a lot, right? The way it is right now. When we say, open source, open source software, free software, a lot of people think, okay, public domain. There's just, you just go. And the problem is that it, first of all, the public domain is anarchy. I'm not saying that in a positive or a negative way. It's just factually there's no control, and that leads to its own interesting problems. You have no rights on either side of the equation, and therefore it's just freedom. The really nice thing about having open source licenses that are legally enforceable is that we are given legal freedoms. There is a way to say, I put this here and I explicitly want you to be able to read it and make it secure and make it better, and I can benefit from that, you can benefit from that. We can build more things. And the amount of control that it should give us, AGPL, someone mentioned before, it should be powerful and it should really, really help us, and it should be better than pure anarchy. And by the way, fun fact, Did anybody know this? There is no public domain in Germany. Public domain is not an intellectual property concept that works here. Therefore, there is some liability attached to letting things go into the world here. Very interesting idea. So, in open source over the years, I think that we're not competing against the people who offer the same services in most cases, right? Like, ideally, when we're good open source citizens, we're competing with each other. I come from open source CMS and open source in general, and we've been working really hard to say, choose proprietary or choose open source, and here are the good reasons to choose that, and here are bad reasons why you shouldn't choose that. But like, if you choose this licensing model and this set of concepts, go with that as a matter of principle. It makes business sense, it makes moral sense, whatever. If that works for you, then choose your products. And Jutta was talking about alternatives to all the different things. But if you want whatever it is, take Adobe Web Experience Manager, take Oracle, take whatever. Not my world. Here I'm going to take Postgres, I'm going to take Typo3, I'm going to take Drupal, I'm going to, So choose open source, then choose a project that does the thing that you need best. And, there's a really good reason to choose Typo3. There's a really good reason to choose Drupal. There are probably still good reasons to choose WordPress. Inside joke there, but, sports people don't push each other off the track as they're running, doing a running race to win the race, right? They compete against each other, and then whoever wins and whoever loses, maybe they're friends, maybe they'll talk about, yeah, see, I got these new shoes, or I did this new training method, or whatever it is, and they get better together. There's a commons, there's shared ideas, right? So, government procurement especially, but also private sector procurement is not generally built around a proper understanding of open source, unfortunately. Politically seen, there are it's a caricature, but there are two sides of this. There are people who say the government should build all its own software and run all its own software, and I don't know is that the right side of the slide? I can't tell. Yeah, yes, right, and hold all the expertise for running the software. And then there's another side, another school of thought that says, no, the private sector should build all the software, and the private sector should hold all the expertise, and then we can sell you access to whatever you need. Now, problem is that both of those are proprietary software models, right? Proper or real free and open source software lives in the middle. Open source is a product of community, is a product of civil society, is a product of 10+5, is human beings working together across border, across culture, whatever. We care about optimizing, data cleanup better together. It doesn't matter where you live. We care about it. So what we're doing is really, really important, and it means that anyone can use this resource that we share together, but we can also benefit from it together. It's a big challenge, right? It doesn't help us much to know this when open source is still so deeply unknown, conceptually, product-wise, factually, whatever. In Aarhus, where I have some good friends, there's a public library, and Microsoft makes some bit of software that's really, really good for library management. I don't remember what it is. But this is a real case study, and libraries over all of Denmark bought in. They got these steeply discounted licenses to use this Microsoft product because, hey, libraries are non-profit entities, and the Microsoft salespeople, hey, non-profit, no problem. Instead of whatever it is a year, you can have it for, I don't know the numbers, but imagine you can have it for €1,000 a year because you're a non-profit and you're doing good in the world. Every single library adopts it. They build communities of practice. They work together. They know how to classify it. They share the whatever. They know how to deal with the specific UTF-8 characters that Danish needs. Everything is great. Then Microsoft decides, right? Not government, not the town hall, not the European Commission. No, Microsoft decides that actually libraries don't fit our definition of nonprofit institutions. So, hey, every single Danish library, you owe us 40,000 euros a year each to use this. Now, you know how geeky librarians are, right? And how much they love data science and love organizing stuff. And you can imagine how much energy they poured into this thing, right? And they're like, oh well, there's no other alternative. We just have to pay this, right? And this is an actual article about this actually happening. Hands up who thinks there's no alternative to whatever the heck it was that they were using from Microsoft. I agree. So I'm coming to the kickoff for a lot of this thinking, but this, we have been complacent in open source. We haven't been telling everyone what makes us different, how special and weird we are, how much we want you to take our stuff, right? Open source, who was in the wave of open source that really went like wild in 2008, 9, 10 around the financial crisis? It was amazing. It was amazing. It was amazing. I was around the people who convinced the White House under Barack Obama to put their website on Drupal, which all of a sudden made open source CMS acceptable for the enterprise. It was incredible. And it made perfect sense because there was no money anywhere. It was crisis everywhere. Every open source, every deliverer of open source solutions that I know, plus minus until a few years ago, has been at 120 to 180% capacity the whole time. Lots of us didn't need to advertise. It was hard to hire technical people, but we've had so much work that we forgot to tell anyone what makes us special, what we do, how, why choose us, because the choice was obvious to enough people that our books were full. So, we didn't invest any of our time, right, in talking about what we do. And then enter early January 2021. Mathias sent me this article from Australia, which is, I've done multiple entire presentations on this situation, so I'm going to try it in a minute. Somebody got the right meeting with the right person in the Australian government and said, your GovCMS in Australia can't do personalization, and personalization is the next big thing that you have to do to make a digital experience. And that person's like, oh, thank you so much for letting us know, Adobe. What are we going to do? Or McKinsey, I think it was. McKinsey's like, we're going to bring in Adobe, and we're going to make a digital experience manager for the Australian government. The Australian government spent $36 million on this prototyping for a personalization system that was illegal under Australian privacy law. You missed the best reaction in the crowd. But and the thing is that I was also on the team that helped Australia adopt an open source CMS vertically integrated to build websites for any public sector. It's got support, it's got it's security, it's got compliance, it's got styling, it's got everything all built in. Any government department in Australia can use it, and it's an open source distro. So there used to be 350 CMSs in Canberra, in the capital. There's one now. 6 Australian states use it, some exclusively. Opposition to the government CMS program, their website is built on the same distro as the GovCMS. It's beautiful. It's Drupal, that doesn't matter, but it's open source and it's awesome. So we have not been telling people how important that is, right? So weird things about open source. Yes, you can have it. You can use it for anything. Have a nice day, right? You can use it. You can use the government distro to protest against the government. Have a nice day. That's okay, right? You are free to choose whatever project you want. You're free to choose whatever you want to do with it. You're free to leave it alone. The software, though, here's one more part about this piece of freedom. Once you release something as open source, it takes on a life of its own, right? Once upon a time, there was a couple who lived in a cottage in the forest, and they had no children. And one day, the wife decided to bake them a child out of gingerbread boy, and she made it and rolled it out and baked it. And when it was ready, he jumped up and down and ran out the door and went on to experience many exciting adventures. They lost him. But that's what we do when we give our software to the world. Now, with all of this, freedom, I was trying to work a joke in here about, as Sting said, if you love someone, set them free. But I haven't figured out how that works here yet. So when you get a free puppy, right, it comes with a lot of responsibility. You have to take care of it. You have to contribute. You have to act responsibly. You have to make sure that there's a sustainable ecosystem around it, right? You have all these freedoms. Everyone else has all these freedoms. It's super, super weird, and it lets us do some really, really amazing things. In a monolithic, monoculture, monotechnical landscape, there's only one way of doing things, and that is the one water hole there is, and whoever's in control of that watering hole is in control or can take control of you and everything else. This is called a negative dependency. We can also call it vendor lock-in. If you want a positive dependency, think about interdependence and collaboration and the community way of doing things and everything that would go into having a landscape like this, right? And we can get there. And there's really, actually in biology with this example, there's taking away the desert, pushing back the Sahara by working as a community, by starting with a handful of sand, adding water, working together as a community to build lasting value and values. And, so there are proven models to go from one to the other, and it's incredibly powerful and incredibly important. Open source does an amazing amount of good, and here's one of my favorite stories. A dark and stormy night, the phone rang at the Typo 3 Association. They answer their phone in Comic Sans. I did that on purpose. And the government of Rwanda said, we've got all these websites that we can't quite access, and we don't know what to do with them, and we don't know if they're secure, but it says Typo 3 on them. What do we do? In a proprietary world, and in the old way of doing development aid, maybe, the Typo 3 Association would have taken one or two preferred partners and sent them down to Rwanda to, we help you, we'll fix this, it's all good, whatever, send the millions of dollars to Redmond, to Seattle, to wherever the others are headquartered, right? And developed financial dependence. And this is colonialist and exploitative, and in the end, it only puts a Band-Aid on it. It doesn't create anything. It doesn't help in the long run. The Typo 3 Association talked with all of its partners, and they found individuals and companies who volunteered to go to Rwanda and train government IT specialists and private sector agency employees to use open source software. It's amazing. The Typo 3 invested actual money over the course of multiple years to do this. I'm also in this community, we used our community to create independent local businesses and expertise. Right now, there are roughly 250 government sites online in Rwanda, all on Typo 3, all built by local people, supported by our community, what have you, but this is creating value in the local economy, skills that they can use for whatever they want. So, democratic and not-for-profit open source supports sustainable and independent local businesses. It's a fantastic case story. I wrote the words for it in my other job. But this is an amazing example of the impact of contributing, being in communities, all of that kind of stuff. So, how does this pay your bills? Your mother asks you, whatever. In 2010, the UK government IT or ICT supplier map looked like this. And those little dots there, you can map it onto HP, IBM, Microsoft, etc. really, really easily. There was the UK government changed their way of doing things. They expressed a preference for open source and a new way to pitch for projects under £1 million, I think, so that all of a sudden, 4 years later, this is what the supplier map looked like. That means government money is going back into the community and not out of the country. That means that people have skilled up. It means that there are opportunities, right? And imagine the impact in that country. Imagine the impact in Rwanda. The Typo 3 people are training people from many other countries now, and this is really, really incredible. Our values are the values of a healthy society. I think that that's more important than ever to think about democracy and cooperation, teaching, sharing, peaceful coexistence, mutual benefit, cross-border cooperation. We are that here and now and today, right? And in a time when all of that is at risk, we are we can be a shining example of how to make a difference while doing good while doing well. We can be employed, we can help our clients, we can employ other people, and we can make a real difference in the world. So I feel like I just told you some hints about how open source is radical and unknown and what we need to do against that, pieces of how the practice is important and how we're doing good in the world. So Mathias says thank you in corporate. I say thank you in OSP. And I'll be here all day. Love to talk with you. I'll probably be here tomorrow. So anyway, that is exactly time.
Great. Thanks, Jeffrey McGuire.